Hi guys, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist. Welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first books for publication. And on my channel, I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of writing, and that's the psychology within it. So the psychology of the characters, the world, all that stuff. Because to me, that's what makes a world and characters interesting and real. So that's generally the angle you'll see me take. So it's been a little bit. Life has been crazy. Those of you who have chimed in from the last few videos know that my husband was recently in the hospital. He was in the hospital for about a week with a septic joint. So he's getting better, but he is on antibiotics at home and still recovering. So I've been spending a lot of my free time helping him. He is improving. Hopefully this Friday the medication will be done and we will be closer back to a normal life. But that's where I've been. But today I wanted to talk about actually the young adults age category, basically. So fiction and books in general are divided among what we call both genres and age categories. So fantasy is a genre, young adult is an age category. So age categories are not always related to the age of the characters. This is actually something I see passed around a lot. Oh, if it's your characters have to be the same age as your age category. Not necessarily. Now with middle age, like middle grade fiction, which is junior high, middle school, probably, but not always. But anyway, that's not the main point I'm talking about here. The main point I want to talk about is specifically the young adult category, which is basically from 13 to like 17, maybe 18, depending on who you ask. And the reason I want to talk about it is because, in my opinion, the young adult category really should be split in two. I think we should have a category from like 13 to like, let's say 15, and then like 16 to 18. And the reason I say that is because there is so much variety in the young adult fiction category. And I really think this is where a lot of the conflict within that category comes from, is just because it is so varied. And people bring up like, let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex in fiction, specifically within the young adult category. So this is a topic I see debated constantly. Like, how much sexual content can you have in a young adult story? And I think that's a legit question, because you have a 13-year-old and you have a 17-year-old. You're going to talk to them very differently. You're going to talk about different topics. That's why I think there really should be a split, like a young adult and then the almost adult. Because when it comes to sex in fiction, I think that for me personally, I think talking about hard topics like grief, sex, things that you don't necessarily always want to have a conversation about, I find using fiction to talk about these things is actually very, very healthy, especially for certain types of people. Because when you talk about heavy topics or topics that are kind of uncomfortable, having a direct conversation, while good, doesn't work for everybody. Some people, they want to be able to explore these ideas and these topics in different ways. And I think fiction gives you basically an outlet to do that. When it comes to sex, a lot of people will say with young adult, no, there shouldn't be any sex. It should all be fade to black, which is basically where you allude to it and then you don't show anything. Some people even say you shouldn't even have that. It should be completely devoid. Don't agree with that. Have you met a teenager? I mean, one of the things you want to do in your fiction story is appeal and help relate to the audience you're aiming for. So if you're writing for young adults, you want to be able for them to relate to the characters. And well, that doesn't mean you have to include sex. I mean, me personally, I usually don't. But it also means that you should take into account what type of lifestyle and world these characters have been exposed to. I've read some stories where like they do bring up sex and the characters are like so completely naive to it. And while yes, there you will have some characters and some people that are that naive. Spoiler alert, I was one of them. Most of them are gonna know, even if they haven't engaged in the act. And I think that's something that young adult kind of it almost, it's like it doesn't want to talk about it. Now, am I saying that you should write a full-on porn with young adults? No, but I am saying, can we be a little more realistic with what these kids are exposed to and what they understand? Most of them are going to understand sex. Language is another big one. I hear that thrown around all the time, you know, mind your language in young adult. And this is one I'm really divided on, because on the one hand, I know that, especially with the younger ones, like 13, 14, 15, their parents, in most cases, still do monitor what they read, as they should. And so a lot of foul language might keep them from buying a certain book or whatnot for their child. But on the other hand, again, there's the realism factor. Kids cuss. Kids curse all the time. My nephew is 6, and he has quite a few curse words under his belt. Doesn't use them very often, but he knows them, and he knows what they mean, and he knows how to use them. So this is tenfold with teenagers. So I really think it's kind of striking a balance with that, because on the one hand, you don't want your books so full of language that no parent's going to let their kid read them. But on the other hand, you want to be able to let your reader know, hey, I understand that I understand how you guys talk and what you guys talk about and that kind of thing. An example, not totally recent, but pretty recent. The first It movie, Chapter 1, my husband said that he absolutely loved it because of the way the kids talk to each other. He's like, growing up as a boy in the time frame that was set in, which was the 80s, he said that was spot on. It's like, that's how boys talk to each other. We push each other, we tease each other, we curse at each other, we're mean to each other. He's like, that's how we act. And he said that's something he does not see in a lot of movies and books, is that kind of banter displayed realistically. So I think that's something to just bear in mind, is where do you want to draw the line is essentially your choice. Like for me, I love language as just a general rule. So I really like to play with how people talk to each other, their body language, all that kind of thing. Because you can show so much about a character and a character's relationship just by how they talk to each other. So for me, you're probably more likely to see language than you are sex in my books, and that's just me. But again, this is why I bring up, in my mind, the young adult category really should be split, because if you take 15 and under, you're definitely going to address it differently than 16 and older, just because there is a change in the mentality. Usually, even in development, we consider 13 to 18 as a very wide range of some kids mature faster, some mature slower. Where generally that's the age where they're starting to explore with their friends and figuring out who they are, and not necessarily if their values are the same as their parents. All this stuff happens, but it's it's such a wide range that I really think if you're talking about someone at 17, they're much closer to adult in mentality than they are a 12-year-old. And I think that's something that the age categories kind of really need to take into consideration. And that's why I am all for a young adult category from 13 to 15, and then a young adult category from 16 to 18. I don't know what you would call it. That's kind of where I'm stuck. I have no idea what you would call it. But I do think that would be easier for people who are seeking out books for their children to kind of gauge, okay, I have a kid who is 11 but is very mature, and they want to read young adult, but I want to make sure they don't get the young adult that's meant for like 17. I think that would be helpful with that. That's just my opinion. You guys let me know what you think. Do you think that the young adult age category needs to be split, or do you think it just needs to be refined, or do you think it's fine how it is? I want to hear your thoughts on it, because I think this is a very interesting conversation, because I see it brought up a lot in the writing community. So that's just my brief video for today. I just wanted to kind of touch on this topic a little bit. So let me know what you guys think. If you guys have suggestions for topics you want me to cover, do let me know. Drop a comment below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. And as always, if you enjoy this content, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss when I upload. I'm going to try to get back into more videos now that things are starting to calm down. So until next time, stay safe. Have a good one.